Hi, and welcome back. Today we will start diving into Pincha mayurasana and how this pose can be so hard, not only physically, but mostly mentally. When I started the practice, I found myself struggling a lot with the fear of death. For some of you, might be quite silly, but this idea of getting upside down, of falling out of poses, could produce a lot of fear in our mind. And the mind doesn't like to learn something new, like I previously explained in my other crow workshop, because the mind wants to keep you safe. And all these practices, new things we want to learn, they scare the mind because we might put ourselves in danger in some ways. So rationally, we know that probably if we fall out of a pose, nothing major will happen. We might injure ourselves lightly, but we're not definitely going to die. But somehow the mind is playing up with us, and most of the time we listen to it. We listen to the stories that it tells us. So the work here is not only building the strength in the body, but also to build the confidence to be able to get into these poses gradually with time and with effort. Very important is also to build strength in the physical body, because once we start getting stronger, we also build that confidence, because we're like, okay, I'm probably be able to move to the next step of the pose, and I might be able to fight the mind a little bit harder this time. And so it's a long process that involves not only us working hard physically, but also trying to tell us that we're fine. But that's the real struggle, especially in the arm balances, inversions, all the upside downs. And like everything, before we start, I like to cover that there are three elements, key elements for every pose in general. And those are the breath, the drishti, and the bandhas. So the breath, important, most important thing in yoga. The fact that when we start practicing one pose, we probably holding on to the breath or start pacing it, or we're struggling really to think about it, just because we're very focused on what we're doing. So the real effort here is also to learn the pose, but once we learn it, to think about going back to the breath and find that stillness within. The bandhas, there are locks within the body that has to be engaged. The body has to be engaged at all times in order to be able to be upside down and feeling kind of peaceful there. And the drishti, which every pose has got, and is always the point of gaze. And I will show you how important it is, especially in Pincha, because the thing I notice a lot in my students is that they set their body up the right way, and then somehow before starting kicking, they start gazing backwards. This makes it much harder to balance at the beginning. So let's break the pose down. Chloe, scusa. And so, first of all, I am hypermobile, so I had to adjust the practice to my own needs. And I always, at the beginning, I was teaching the pose only one way, and then I noticed that the elements of the setup can change depending on the student and their physicality. Okay, so for example, I know that I'm hypermobile, and I know that once I'm upside down, my elbows are gonna start sliding out, so I place my elbows slightly narrower than shoulder width, because once I'm up, I'm gonna get shoulder width. And then placement of the hands can vary a lot again, because I'm sliding out. I tend to get this triangle shape with my fingers so that they're pushing ones against the others, so they are kind of stopping the slide of my elbows. Some people like the block that is going to be used like this, with a 90-degree angle with the thumb and the index. Others hate it. There are some other variations that are more advanced, like a Dharma style, or like lots of different shapes. But I would suggest you at the beginning to keep the hands on the floor so you can grip with them, and it's gonna support your balance so much more. So I would start with my hands down, elbows shoulder width or slightly narrower, and then again the gaze is always forward. For every pose we direct the gaze forward, which doesn't mean I have to strain my neck to look forward, but simply I'm gonna direct my gaze here instead of there, backwards. Okay, so directing the gaze forward, which means that once my hips are up, my gaze is gonna land onto my thumbs. Okay, so I'm just directing the energy there, and then just start learning how it feels like to be here. Maybe you still have to work with flexibility of the hamstring, so you might not be able to straighten in the legs like this, and you might have to bend the knees, but it's also absolutely fine as long as you're really working on the shoulders and leaning forward. Okay, and there's some exercise that I'm gonna cover all the drills and exercises that can help you to build the strength, opening of the shoulders, and so much more in order to get upside down. But for now, we're just focusing on how to set up for your pincha. Okay, so bringing the hips up, and then from here, Chloe, scusa, thank you, sit. And then from here, we're gonna keep gazing forward and pushing always the hands and the elbows against the floor, trying to get the hips up. Okay, maybe getting light onto the toes. We could do this with the one leg up, and bear in mind, imagine I'm doing this with a wall. And again, the idea of the wall is to keep you safe. But like I experienced on myself, the wall became, I felt like I had a toxic relationship with the wall, because at some point I could do everything as long as I was close to a wall. So I would have that confidence of kicking like a minute, and I would go up straight away, not even touching the wall. But every time I would be away from the wall, I wasn't able to do anything. So just try to work with the wall in a way that, thank you, in a way that you feel safe. So in case you lose balance, you're gonna fall and it's there. But don't get too attached to it, otherwise we will play an opposite effect. Okay? So from here, getting up, and then imagine you have the wall, and then you're lifting one leg, gazing forward. I'm staying here, feeling how it feels to be upside down. Okay, if I want to kick, try not to kick and catch. Okay, this is a common mistake that people do. Kick and catch, it's much harder to get the line straight away. I would advise you to land into your split. Okay, but think about the split. At this time, I'm not collapsing. Look at my shoulders. I'm not collapsing down. I'm pushing, 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 pushing. Okay? Once you get that stability with the arms and the shoulders, then you can start closing the legs. Then you can start getting variation, gazing through, opening the shoulders. Then you can get other leg variations or whatever that is that you're working with. Up again, Scorpio as well. So see how is here. I need to kind of shrug the shoulders a little bit, but every time I'm pushing, pushing, pushing. Okay, so that's the major factor in your pincha. Shoulders, shoulders. That's the reason why men, most likely, when they attempt a pincha, can hold it for a few seconds with a horrible shape, because they have the strength on the upper body, but they don't have a flexibility. The shoulders, 90% of the men, are quite closed. So they're gonna compensate with banani back, okay? Where the women, they cannot even get up because we are not that strong on the upper body. But once we get that strength, we are holding very nice lines because our shoulders are more open than men usually. So we all have to work on something, and I'm gonna explain all the drills in the next videos, but for now, think always about setting yourself up the best way, even if you're still not lifting the feet off the floor, even if you're not kicking, because the fear is still there. Get yourself the best way at the start so that you start evolving in the pose the proper way. So hands forward and find these variations. Find the one, try them. Okay, try them and find the one that works for you. So elbow shoulder width, gazing forward to my thumbs, hips up, working on this even if my legs are bended, trying to get the hips stuck to the shoulders, and then working on kicking. Kicking with your L, kick. When you kick, imagine you're pushing the navel in toward the spine. So you suck the belly in. So that means you're lifting the hips. Kick, kick, kick. Okay? And then maybe you get the split, but don't collapse. Push, push, push. And work with that. And let me know how it goes. See how you find it. Let me and Chloe know how you find it. And I see you until the next video. Ciao.